Your point about the treaties is vitally important. This is often misunderstood. Canada, for instance, can agree to a target, and if they don't do anything, they can't be sued into compliance, their own government compliance. The U.S. is unique in the status it gives treaties. When we sign a treaty, we live up to it. Other countries can sign treaties and not live up to them. And that is a fundamental difference that makes the United States hesitant to embrace treaties as a general role, and I think wisely, because treaties have a very high status in American law that is not necessarily reflected in the other countries.
Well, actually, Dr. Green, that's not entirely true. I'm sorry. Well, let me tell you why it's not, Senator, because I was at the treaty signing, which we ratified unanimously in the United States Senate, the 1992 Framework Convention, which George Herbert Walker Bush negotiated. And we did it in Rio, and it's been 18 years since then or whatever, and we haven't done a thing to meet it. In fact, the last 8 years, emissions in the United States of America in greenhouse gases went up 4 times faster than in the 1990s. So that's the reason we're talking about the need to move to a mandatory reduction, because we didn't and nobody else did either. A few people tried here and there. So don't, you just can't throw that stuff out there like that and say, oh, we do it, they don't, blah, blah, blah. Look, if you accept that you got to hold it, you don't accept that you have to hold it at 2 degrees. You may know something that thousands of other scientists don't. They won a Nobel Prize. You and I didn't. And they won a Nobel Prize for their work that said we got to hold it to the 2 degrees centigrade. The G20 just went to Italy and came out ratifying that we have to hold it to 2 degrees centigrade. Now, maybe you know something I don't about where the tipping point is. But I got a lot of scientists that I respect whose life work, from John Holdren, who's now the science advisor to the president, to Jim Hansen over at NASA, and a bunch of others who tell us we've got a 10-year window to try to meet the standard of keeping the temperature from rising over 2 degrees centigrade, or you reach a tipping point. Now, is the tipping point at 2.2, 2.3, 2.5? I don't know. I don't think they'd tell you they know. But they know because of the consequences of every model that they've looked at, that that's what begins to happen. And all of the evidence is coming back faster and to a greater degree than they predicted, underscoring the predictions they've made. Now, at some point, you've got to step back and say, these guys are making sense, because what they said is going to happen is happening. And it's happening faster and at greater risk. To wit, the Chinese, you say, they don't, I think Senator Hatt said they won't abide by it or don't care about it. The Chinese are petrified by what is happening in the context of global climate change. The reason the Himalayan glaciers are disappearing, and the predictions are they're going to be gone by the year 2035. Now, do I know it'll happen in 2035? No, but I know what has happened. Every prediction about when the Arctic ice was going to melt has been accelerated to the point now that instead of 30 years down the road, it's now 2013 that they say we will have an ice-free Arctic in the summer. That's what their predictions are. Who withdraw? I haven't seen that withdraw. In fact, they had an ice-free passage during last summer. I have not seen that withdrawn. You send me something that says that's been changed. Okay? And we'll make it part of the record here.
I will do, Senator. Thank you.
So, bottom line, every most recent scientific update, and I get them periodically. I ask them to come in and say, what's happening? Is it less than? What's the rate? And without exception, they look at me and they say, Senator, I can't even talk about some of the things that are happening today publicly because people won't believe it. Like columns of methane rising out of the ocean floor that you can light a match and it'll explode or ignite where it bursts into the open air because the permafrost is melting. We just voted $400 million to move Newtok, Alaska. The citizens voted to move it inland because of what's happening in terms of the ice melt. There's I think, some 400 villages threatened now in Alaska. Ask Lisa Murkowski or Mark Begich what's happening in Alaska. So all I can say to you is that we have to sort of employ the precautionary principle here. If I've got a few thousand scientists over here and you and a few others over here, the weight is pretty heavy to say to me that as a public person I ought to implement the precautionary principle. And if I have chief executives like Jeff Immelt and Lou Hay and Chad Halliday of DuPont and a bunch of other people who run Fortune 500 companies telling me, Senator, we got to price carbon and we want certainty in the marketplace, I'm going to listen. And you know, unless you can give me an overpowering reason why those guys are all wrong. And I don't think you have.
Well, all I can say, Senator, is I read the IPCC reports, the Science of Climate Change report in its totality, page cover to cover, and I follow the latest journals. My doctoral degree is in environmental science and engineering. I dare say I'm capable of understanding the literature and forming my own opinion.
Has your study been peer-reviewed?
Pardon me?
No,
I don't work in the peer review literature, Senator. I don't work for a university.
So you don't submit your studies for any peer review?
No.
You realize that there are something like 2,000 or 3,000 studies, all of which concur, which have been peer-reviewed, and not one of the studies dissenting has been peer-reviewed.
That's not correct, Senator. I can send you
show me a peer-reviewed study.
I'll send you a list.
Please, because nobody else has.
I'll be glad to.
And in Al Gore's book, he cites the same fact, and nobody's ever contradicted it with a peer-reviewed study.
I'll be glad to send you some studies, Senator.
Look forward to it.